With the last episode of the Amazing Digital Circus wrapping up the show, I figured there was no better time to finally talk about this indie phenomenon than now. During this series, I'll be going episode by episode and talking about the writing, the characters, and the story. I'll also be saying how I would change the show in retrospect. Seeing as how I'm an unmonetized YouTuber, I obviously know what I'm talking about. Also, there will be spoilers, so go watch the show and then come back. I need the views. Please. Please subscribe! So without further ado, sit back, grab a snack, and let's go through the circus one last time. The pilot episode, which originally aired on October 13th, 2023, begins with us seeing the loading screen of the circus. Kane comes on screen and introduces us to the show. We get a quick theme song that introduces us to all of the characters, and it shows us that a character named Kaufmo is missing. Remember this because it's going to be very important later. As the theme song finishes up, we see Pomni arrive. She's incredibly confused and knocks over some cast members. Kane acts surprised that a new member has joined and immediately jumps all over the chance to be the center of attention. And right here we have to pause. There's already a few interesting things that are happening. The first one I'd like to point out is that Kane doesn't make them do the intro sequence every day. He specifically had them do this, and I think it would be too large a coincidence for Pomni to just happen to arrive that day. The second important thing to point out is actually Pomni herself. We know that Kane made their avatars specifically from their brain scans. That means he knew that Pomni was arriving because he is the one that designed her avatar. The third interesting thing is actually the fact that Kaufmo is missing. As we learn later in the episode, we know that Kaufmo abstracted, but we know that Kaufmo has to be abstracted before the intro sequence because Kane doesn't force him to join. Zubul actively refuses to take part in anything Kane makes, so I doubt that they did it willingly. This means that for the entirety of the pilot, Kane is aware that Kaufmo is abstracted. The only question left now is why wouldn't he do anything about it? Coming back to the story, Kane gives Pomni a quick tour of the circus. At one point during this, he glitches out and his eyes have a blue error code on them. We know from episode 7 that when Kane does this, he isn't really glitching. He's just doing it because he thinks it's good for whatever plot he's doing. After this gag, Pomni sees the exit door again. We know from episode 8 that this is most likely Pomni conjuring the exit. However, it is possible that the first exit door or two were remnants of Kaufmo constructing them. Kane is aware of this and quickly moves her back to the circus with the excuse of the moon getting frisky. Pomni vomits and Bubble comes out and says,
"I'm on it, boss!" Ow.
Kane is disgusted but quickly moves on. He makes a big show of giving Pomni a new name, and whenever she tries to bring up the fact that she saw an exit door, he says that she's wrong and that it's simply digital hallucinations. Love the song, by the way. Afterwards, he says they're going to have an in-house adventure to ease Pomni in. He starts trying to tell them what the adventure is about, but Bubble keeps interrupting him. Right here is where we get to see something interesting. Kane is obviously bothered by what Bubble does, and yet he keeps Bubble around. We know from episode 2 that he can easily rid himself of any NPC. I wonder if that'll be important later. Zubul tries walking off but is attacked by the Gloinks. I absolutely believe that this was intentionally done by Kane to force Zubul to be a part of the adventure. Everyone is relatively unconcerned though, which I find hilarious. Also, Jax is just hilarious in this episode. His, "Oh no, they killed Zubul. Anyways, you guys want to go get something to eat?" line is hilarious. You can tell that he's a bit of a bum, but it's shown in a comical light, unlike, later in the show. But we'll get there when we get there. For now, we join Ragatha, Jax, and Pomni to go see what's up with Kaufmo. When I first watched this show, I assumed that these three were going to be our main characters. Man, I was so wrong. But for now, we get to enjoy the dialogue between these three. Ragatha explains Kane's adventures and why they stopped trying to escape. They arrive at Kaufmo's door and Pomni is disassociating hard. Jax taps her on the face to bring her back, another moment that I think is humorous. But let's go back to Ragatha for a moment. You can immediately tell that there is more to her than what she wants everybody to see. As she was explaining to Pomni about the circus, she began to have a mental breakdown, but she stopped herself as to not, and I say this with heavy quotation marks, burden anyone else. Great writing for such a short scene. Oh, what could have been. Anyway, Ragatha wonders why Kaufmo won't open his door, and we find out that Jax has a key to his room. Not only that, he has a key to all of their rooms, something that doesn't actually ever get explained in the show. He says that he put a bug in Ragatha's room. It's unknown if he's telling the truth or not, but what he says before opening the door is more important.
You'll never know until it's too late.
Well, now we know what happened to Kaufmo. Jax grabs his bowling ball and dips. Again, he's just so funny in this episode. A few important things need to be acknowledged here. Kaufmo was drawing pictures of the exit door before he abstracted. This means that most likely he was also conjuring exit doors. Once he realized that they were fake, he went to his room to be alone with his thoughts. Unfortunately, his thoughts became too much for him to handle. Another interesting thing to note is that the room is dark. We know that the dark keeps the abstracted people calm, so once the door was opened and the light came into the room, he became aggressive. Fantastic foreshadowing, Gooseworks. Fantastic. After this, he begins to attack all the people near him. He attacks Ragatha and tries to get to Pomni too, but she's able to get away just in time. I find it interesting that Ragatha begins to apologize for fake laughing at Kaufmo's jokes. Even though Kaufmo is gone, she still feels the need to apologize. That's how deep her psychological trauma is. Again, fantastic writing. Where did it all go? After Pomni comes back to help Ragatha, she's told to go find Kane. An interesting thing to point out is that the red hand is the one that gets glitched. In episode 7, the red button was the one that made them stay, so her red hand being messed up is foreshadowing of her not wanting to stay. Oh my gosh, I sound like a crackpot theorist. Matt Pat would be proud. Shout out to Matt Pat, by the way. He was a huge part of my childhood and one of the reasons that I wanted to become a YouTuber. Thanks, Matt. We cut to Jax as he's out of breath and meeting up with Gangle and Kinger. Something interesting to note is that he doesn't tell them about the abstraction. He actually lies about it. He says that Kaufmo has never been this happy. He hears something, presumably the abstracted Kaufmo, and forces the two into the aforementioned Zubul hole. And now we have to stop to talk about characterization again. The first time I watched this, I was actually incredibly interested that he had done this. This showed me that even though he's obviously a jerk, he doesn't want these guys to be hurt by Kaufmo. It was great writing that let him be a jerk, but to a reasonable extent. And now that the show is over, this scene makes very little sense to me. I have no idea why he would go out of his way to make sure they didn't run into Kaufmo. End of show Jax would be more likely to try and lead Kaufmo to them, in my opinion. Just goes to show how much his character has changed. Following this, the characters notice that Zubul is about to be eaten by the Gloink Queen. Zubul asks for help and calls them idiots. Jax says, "Kinda rude, Zuby. No, I don't want to help you." And I think that's actually really funny. Seriously, almost every line out of this guy is a zinger in the pilot. Gangle and Kinger play rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to help Zubul, and Gangle loses because they can only play paper. I love that Kinger is aware of this and plays scissors so that he can win. Another important thing to note is that they're in the dark right now, so he has some more wits about him than usual. Man, the pilot really sets everything up. Maybe that's why I like it so much. Anywho, he tries to grab Zubul's head, but since his hands aren't attached to anything, they just get eaten along with Zubul. After this, Jax sees a Gloink that's glitching out and glances around nervously. This feeds into the point I made a few moments ago, so I won't talk too much about it for fear of being repetitive. Also, please subscribe. Please subscribe, please. We cut back to see Pomni as she runs away from Kaufmo. She's finally able to see herself for the first time since she got here. She touches her face with her blue hand, once again foreshadowing the buttons in episode 7. Since it's the blue hand, this shows that she still wants to leave. She hides behind a barrel of monkeys and sees Kaufmo completely destroy one. She runs off to find Kane, but finds an exit door instead. She runs inside only to find an empty office setting. She keeps running through them as we cut back to the rest of the cast. We get some funny back and forth between the cast and the Gloinks Queen before the abstracted Kaufmo breaks through the ceiling and beats the ever-living snot out of the Gloinks Queen. During this, Kinger gets a hold of Zubal's head and starts freaking out about how they're gonna get out of there. Zubal points out that there is a conveniently placed escalator. We get another relatively funny Jax moment in which he tells Gangle, "Ladies first." Wait, why would I say that? And then he shoves her. Zubal starts questioning why Pomni isn't there. Jax tells her to be quiet so that he can hear the escalator. Man, I'm sorry for pulling a Digital Circus finale and making a good portion of this video about Jax, but his writing is just so much better here than it is in the rest of the series. It's legitimately funny having them dismiss a serious concern so that he can hear the escalator. After this, we cut back to Pomni freaking out as she runs through door after door. She sees the computer and headset that she originally put on when she entered the circus, and she begins to freak out as we pan up to see the CNA logo. She keeps running through doors until she enters the void. Once this happens, we finally get to see Kane again. He's having lunch with Bubble, which I find interesting since he seems to loathe him so much, and he looks at his watch and says something really interesting.
Oh no! Someone's venturing out into the void! They'll get totally spoiled!
I never really knew what the spoiled line meant. Now we know that he was referring to the fact that they would know about the brain scans. He takes her back to the circus and hams up the act when they say that Kaufmo's abstracted. He also is pretty obviously lying when asked about the exit doors. Ragatha enters and Kane immediately fixes her. I still wonder if he purposefully let her stay like that or if it was an oversight on his part. I love that we get to see hints of Kane's villainy this early in the show. Looking back on it from an end-of-series perspective, we know he knew about Kaufmo, we know he's lying about the exit door, and we know that he's lying about exactly how much power he has. However, his charming ringmaster persona is more than enough to keep the viewer entertained enough to ignore his more menacing aspects. He rewards the players for a job well done, and Bubble makes them a meal with
all the love I'm legally allowed to give.
And it ends with Pomni showing a crazy smile and zooming out to show us the circus and the computer and the real world with nobody there. This is the part where I tell you guys what I think should have been done differently during the story. However, I actually don't think anything needs to be done differently. The pilot does a wonderful job of introducing us to the characters and shows us what we have to look forward to with the story. For instance, I love how all of the characters interact with each other. You really get the sense that they've had their own dynamics for a while now. Like Kinger and Gangle, when they went off on their adventure, give off a really cute grandfather-granddaughter vibe, especially with their rock-paper-scissors game. Zubal gets the least characterization out of the cast, but their snarkiness is interesting to see against the more lighthearted characters like Kinger. I especially love Kane in this episode. From lying about the exit door to his goofy ringmaster persona, you really get to see a menacing undertone to an otherwise very light-hearted character. And Pomni's reaction to everything is so realistic. Like, imagine yourself in that situation. Most of us would have the exact same reaction that she did. It's actually one of the things that got me hooked on this show to begin with. And with that, episode 1 of our little series has come to an end. I'm sure that the quality of this show's writing and characters will only get better from here. Right? I want to thank you if you watched all the way to the end. The Digital Circus is a huge reason that I wanted to become a YouTuber in the first place. It made me want to create something that I could be proud of, and this channel is proof that it can happen. So thank you, Gooseworks and Glitch, and thank you for watching. I'll see y'all next time.